listening to The Andres Segovia Show.
And welcome everyone to The Andres Segovia Show. I am your host, as always, Andres Segovia. And happy December to all of you from a wet, rainy, and depending on where you are, also snowy Southern California. I'm really trying to grasp my mind around the fact that we are already in December, and it's once again time for the news roundup. Yes, it is. It's just every time I do one of these segments, I always think like it's the beginning of the month or the end of it. But the point is that it's another month in the books. And this is the last month of the year, and it's just it's daunting to really think about that, like how fast time is flying. Because this is the first year I truly get to enjoy the holidays with my family, because yes, I have my three kids. My littlest has been present for basically the past 2 years, but this is the first time he's actually able to actively participate, because he's able to, whereas before, put on the high chair, spoon feed, this and that. Or like last year, I was actually on the road. He sat on the car seat most of the time until he said, "I can't take any more, Daddy. Pull over," from Tucson in Arizona. I was like, "That's enough." We were on a long road trip to and from Texas, but it's just really was a lot of fun to see that the kids are, all of them, able to participate. So now I'm really looking forward to Christmas, because my son, my littlest one, understands now. So that's going to be exciting. But that's not the news you're tuning in for. You're tuning in for what did the month of November have in store in the world of real estate news, financial, and all that stuff. Well, I got to tell you, I was planning to do this episode streamed live, but without much warning. I'm sure not many of you would have tuned in, but I'm glad I didn't do it, because this is my second attempt at recording this, because once I get to the headlines, you'll understand why I say that I ended up going a little off the rails. So this is not an off-the-record segment, so I have to be professional as possible. So I'm going to redo this in this fashion, because this is the month where I collected the most headlines, and I actually had to stop getting more headlines onto my stack of stuff, because it's a lot of them are repetitive. So after I recorded what was supposed to be the news roundup, and was actually morphed into a 2-part series, like that makes no sense. I'm not going to do that, especially when I have other content scheduled for the month that I don't want to push out. So that's why I'm like, all right, I'm going to redo this, and I'm breaking this down to 3 different segments of the news roundup, or 3 different sections, because there is a theme to all this. So I'd rather get the bad stuff out of the way, and then focus on some of the more mundane, mediocre, kind of hilarious titles or headlines that came across my wire in the month of November. So there are 2 predominant themes here. Well, one predominant theme in 2 different areas. The first is at a national level, and the other one is at the California level. And here are the headlines. I'm just going to spitfire these, and I'm going to extrapolate the essence of all these articles attaining to this section. The NationalMortgageNews.com was reporting that rent control will kill multifamily real estate. We had an article saying multifamily investors see spread of rent control as the biggest risk to our industry. That's from biznow.com. Another article, this one's from MarketWatch.com, says climate change will break the housing market, says David Britt, who predicted the 2008 financial crisis, supposedly. And this is what I'm going to extrapolate from all these headlines by addressing what TheRealDeal.com had. And this is actually from October, but still applies. It's about how rent control battles are playing out across the U.S. And it's that tenant campaigns are promoting rent caps. We all know this because California just passed one in October. It rammed it down our throats when the people voted against it last year. Oh, and not just rent caps, but they're also looking for just cause eviction legislation and are gaining momentum. And one of the presidential candidates has unveiled his own proposal for a nationwide rent control. So that's what is at stake at the nationwide level. Rent control is at the forefront in a lot of people's minds because, economically speaking, it's also the most expensive expense on a monthly basis that individuals have, whether it's rent or mortgage. So the housing affordability crisis throughout the country is predominant in many people's minds, and because the people are organizing because they believe this to be corporate corruption, they're swaying the government to take action that is more leftist progressive policies that will stifle housing. Because over here in California, we see a lot of it. We see a lot of these buildings being built, these commercial buildings, multi-unit, dense population living is what they're going for in the attempts to make you basically leave your car behind and utilize mass transit, because a lot of these buildings are being built near stations or future stations. And the thing is that while it sounds great on paper, the implementation thereof is actually a little different, because you have to take people's rights away. You got to eminent domain some houses. And that's exactly what's going on in the city of Los Angeles, which I'll get to in a moment. But the housing crisis itself is something that's very serious, and it's affecting people all across the country. And the state, and I guess you could say at the city level and in some cases the state level, some of them are getting way too extreme, because we know that New York has some of the strictest rent control laws placed in certain cities. Oregon was the first state to pass a statewide rent control. California became the second. Not to mention, there's still a bunch of cities in California that had their own rent stabilization ordinance already implemented. They're stricter than the state cap. But the point is that now people are thinking that's the only solution, that you put a price cap on something, and that's how you solve the problem. And no, it hasn't. And I'll prove it to you here in a moment. So those are the articles that are talking about that if there is a real estate collapse, it's because rent control is going to destroy it, unless you believe David Burt, who says the climate change is going to break the housing market, which I think is full of crap. So along those lines, the one other headline that kind of speaks to the whole doom and gloom is this one. It says the U.S. housing market bubble is about to burst as fear sets in. This is from, I'll tell you what the website is in a moment. But this article basically stitches a bunch of tweets together and tries to create a narrative of someone believing that, like, look, you see this and you see that, these are the trends, it's going to collapse. Again, whenever I have any article that I reference on this show, you can find them at the show notes at www.theandressegovia.com, accompanying the episode. So look for the November News Roundup, and you're going to find this, the resources section that has all these articles, including this one, because this one's talking about that the National Association of Realtors, they had an overwhelming majority of metro areas experienced price gains with very limited inventory growth in the third quarter of 2019. That is from the National Association of Realtors. And this individual writing this article is extrapolating that this information is when you read a little more into it, you're going to find out just how bad the economy actually is. This is where the section, the NRA's cautious view on the state of the U.S. housing market raises a red flag. The NAR pointed that the median price of single-family homes increased in, I'm going to throw a bunch of numbers here, 166 of 178 markets the association measures, up from 91% of the markets that showed growth in the second quarter. The median price of a single-family home in the U.S. also went up. But this is where it's good. The good news ends. The Commerce Department had reported last month that the median price of a new home was down 8.8% in September. The month-over-month decline was also severe at 7.9%. This is the problem with this article, and I'm not gonna dive entirely into this because it's incredibly stupid. This is from a tech blog called ccn.com. And actually, the entirety of the link, this is how ridiculous it sounds. This is a tech blog, okay? It's ccn.com.cdn.ampproject.org. Like, who the heck are these guys? And how do they make headline news? Because this is the kind of sensationalist headlines that discourage people and cause fear-mongering. Well, it just so happens that this tech blog doesn't necessarily have a bunch of editors or publishers of articles. They hire freelance, and whoever wrote this article isn't even situated in the United States. It's admittedly this individual. Where does he reside? He's based in Indore, India, not here, and trying to make sense of a market he isn't a part of. This disingenuous article is just rife with inaccuracies, because when you have, take for example California, when you have half of the properties bought up last year, bought up in cash, because the stats aren't out for 2019 yet. When they're bought up in cash, you can't have a market collapse when there's no mortgage on it. You cannot have a bank repossessing a property. And when it comes to the rest of the country, when you're comparing numbers from August to September, that's because anybody that knows anything about the housing market, the housing picks up in March when the tax returns are coming in and peaks out at the end of August, because at the end of August and early September, families have their kids back in school and don't want to move. Therefore, the slow season starts. And properties that have been on the market in the summer that didn't move, therefore would drop in September. That is the essence of how economics works in the housing market. And to compare basically an apples to oranges median price and indicate that there's a market collapse coming is just utterly ridiculous and proves that whoever wrote this article has absolutely no idea how the housing market works in the United States. And I'll take you to task for that. You want to debate me? You're welcome to come on my program and have a debate with me about the housing market. All right, so that does it for what I was bringing up in the nationwide sense. That there's fear mongering and true fears. The fear mongering about the housing's going to collapse, and everybody's trying to say that it's these different factors that are going to do it, because the economy this and the economy bad. It's the economy stupid, and the other one's about, well, the icebergs are going to melt and just wipe everybody out. So like, okay, that's going to destroy housing. Duh. But we are in a global cooling state. Wait, what? I thought it was global warming. Whatever. These guys can't make up their mind. Okay, so I said there's 3 sections to this. We covered 1. The second section is now California. And it's the same lines: housing affordability and the rent control issue. I'm going to spitfire all these headlines just so you get a sense of how crazy it's become. Now, there is a narrative here, though. There's an article, a great one from Bloomberg. Oh, I say great one because they summarize a lot, but that doesn't mean I agree with all of it. But at the same time, it does paint a picture as to how this happened. The article from Bloomberg.com is called "How California Became America's Housing Market Nightmare." That's definitely one that I recommend to be read. And the reason that's a big deal is because that a lot of youth here in California are not able to buy a property. Like, for example, San Francisco is losing residents because it's too expensive for nearly everyone. That's from usatoday.com. The housing affordability has reached a fever pitch that the California Association of Realtors has called for legislative action to prioritize housing supply in the coming year. So this is from car.org. Now, when we say housing supply, we are not talking about all these apartment buildings being erected. That does nothing to help in the housing prices. That does nothing in terms of increasing or affecting affordability. When we call for housing supply, we are talking about homes that people can buy, not that they can rent. So I just wanted to be clear about that. All right. In line with that, because of the housing affordability issue, Apple announced, and this is from Apple.com, Apple announced in November that they commit to put in to invest $2.5 billion to, as they say, combat housing crisis in California. What they really mean is that they're going to be making developments. But the thing is that they can build the rentals, but that's not solving the problem. We haven't built enough houses when our population's basically doubled in the past 10 years. I've gone over this before. You heard me talk about it. So please check out my previous episodes talking about the housing affordability crisis. So Apple's committing to it, but how they implement it, I hope, is not on rentals. They need to be able, if they're going to put that much money in to develop tract homes and stuff like that, let it be things that people can buy. If they can buy, it'll help in the housing affordability crisis. So yes, another one. This is from Yahoo News, that there's a so-called cheap option for young people that are flocking to Los Angeles on how to live. It's called capsule living. It's literally like a literal capsule, where it's like based on the pictures that I saw, it's like 5 by 10 maybe, barely fits you in there. It's so tiny, but hey, that's something for you to consider to be able to live in California, or especially Los Angeles, because it's too expensive. And as we get near the end of the year, you heard me talk about this at the fallout of this law, the state rent cap, which is the law AB Assembly Bill 1482. I've been talking about that it was going to be really, really bad, that the government, the state government, have ruined the holidays for everybody. And yes, California cities find themselves in an eviction crunch less than 2 months before the law is even implemented. This is from CaliforniaGlobe.com. As I said, and as I predicted, that's exactly what was going to happen. And cities are struggling with that. And I also said that the state, the state government and the local governments were going to rile up the tenants activists to turn against the so-called greedy landlords. And that's exactly what is happening on the titles of these articles that are being spread around. Because Long Beach followed suit like Los Angeles did and issued a moratorium that freezes no-fault evictions. This is from ibbusinessjournal.com. No, LB Long Beach Business Journal.com. So lbbusinessjournal.com. And then this other one, waiting for the rent caps. Waiting for the caps on rents, California cities push back against greedy landlords. This is from the LA Times. And it's villainizing the landlords, just pitting, basically making a class warfare that didn't exist, but exacerbating the problem and creating something that wasn't before and saying that's how it was. That's the problem when you implement progressive socialist ideologies. You bring about your own destruction. And that's exactly what's happening here in California. Just pitting people against people. And when the concern across the country about rent control is the fact that in one of those articles, I think it was biznow.com article about rent control that's going to kill multifamily investments, is that companies, like commercial real estate companies that manage properties here in California, Oregon, and others, they have reported an immediate decrease in investments from their clients into those areas that have rent control because there's no return on investment. When people have money to be able to invest, they put it into the economy. And when it's put into the economy, it benefits everyone. That is the problem because everybody sees it the other way around. Everybody sees that, oh, these guys are in it for the profit. Absolutely, because that's the only way to grow money. And people that don't understand how to grow wealth will never get out of their rut. There are individuals that are renting that know that it's not the way to be, and they rather buy because they know that if they're able to acquire a property, they can build wealth upon that instead of throwing wealth to the rubbish bin every single month. But there are some people that believe that renting is the same thing as having a mortgage, and therefore they have all the rights to their units, which they do not, because that property belongs to somebody else by the title of your contract. You are getting permission to live somewhere at a rate in someone else's property. Nowhere does it say you own a thing. And that is what's happening, that the states and the local municipalities are turning the people into a mob and are just mobbing landlords, villainizing everybody because they think that every single landlord is a freaking commercial property management firm. No, when a lot of these are mom and pop shops or individuals, seniors. It's sad that there's a broad paintbrush put on landlords because I've seen some of their suffering. And it's like, and no one cares about them because they say it's the haves versus the haves nots. They're like, if the market isn't working because it's so expensive. It's rent control, folks. This is the article that I mentioned earlier. San Francisco is losing residents because it's too expensive for nearly everyone. San Francisco has one of the strictest rent controls and they had it in place for decades. The same thing with Los Angeles. So if it hasn't worked for decades, why the heck are we implementing it across the state? And why is the California Association of Realtors throwing in the towel instead of trying to bring legislation to the people so they can vote on it and vote it down again next year? We did it last year, 60-40. Why can't we do it again? The state rammed it against the will of the people in the name of the will of the people. That makes no sense. So that's why I got worked up in the first attempt at this, because as I went through it, I lost it. I'm sorry, folks. It's just, this kind of stuff angers me. Some people might think this is political. The fact of the matter is, politics have ruined this economic discussion. Everybody already has their minds made up about rent control. Because they pay rent, they say the rent's too damn high, therefore it's the landlord's fault. It's already politicized. I am not politicizing anything. I'm trying to cut through the bull to tell you what's actually happening. And with facts on my side, telling you economically the hardships that rent control has created. And if that's not enough to dissuade you from rent control, I don't know what else I could do. I guess wait for the buildings to crumble because they are crumbling. It's sad. It's really, really sad. And the fact that we let politics divide us on this affordability issue crisis is the very reason we are not going to reach a solution. Let us talk about ideas. Let us check emotions at the door, because emotions always get the better of us. Let's let the true facts play out. Third segment, because I want to wrap up this episode. I just took another sip of my Silent Smooth Black Rifle Coffee. BlackRifleCoffee.com is where you can get the Black Rifle Coffee. I strongly recommend it. I'm a supporter of the veterans, and this is a veteran-owned company. and they make excellent coffee, which they dubbed Fresh Roasted Freedom, which it definitely is. They do not sponsor this in this episode, but hey, these guys gave so much of their lives. It's the least I can do is just let people know they actually exist and they run a company, because it's not easy. As one of the founders of this company testified about assimilating back into the public after serving multiple tours when he was actively in the Army Rangers, and after he retired, he actually went into independent contracting, or what some people would say guns for hire, because he didn't know what else he could do. And when he was done with that, it's like, what do I do now? And he partnered up with friends and started a business. One had an apparel company, and then of course the best part of it, the coffee company. So that's why I do a plug-in for them. And for all the men and women that are actively serving and that have served, thank you very much. Especially for those of you that created this cup of Fresh Roasted Freedom. Now, last segment, because I don't want to end it on a downer. Let's talk about some more interesting articles, because here's the obligatory, hey, this is the hot housing market that you should actually tune into. This one has a list of cities of where the housing market is obviously the hottest. But what's most interesting about this article, this is from beaconjournal.com, is that Ohio is leading the list of the hottest markets in the country. And this one I'm actually going to pull up because I want to read a few from the list, because it actually fascinated me. It has at number 3 is Columbus, and that includes Springfield at number 9, not to be mistaken where the Simpsons live. Canton, Massillon, number 13, and Dayton, number 14. So if you've been looking to invest out of state, and I did interview an out-of-state investor, so you've been curious about how to invest out of state, I recommend you check that episode out. It was one of my earlier episodes where I interviewed James Allen, the out-of-state investor, and it's a very young man that got into investing. Took advice and ran with it, and he's making a name for himself. So I'm very happy for him and his family. So if it works for him, it can also work for you. Okay, the other article that I wanted to bring up is how Florida sunshine and tax benefits are beckoning billionaires to move over there, and we know this because Trump himself had basically just moved his residency from New York over to Florida, because first off, New York didn't want him, and another thing, Florida doesn't have any income tax. What? Yeah, if you didn't know that, that's why people are moving to Florida. Okay, next one over. Well, this one's actually interesting. This was kind of California, but it's not really about the housing crunch. It's more about blackouts, fires, high gas prices. So who wants to live in California today? That's a good question, because people still want to live here, but being able to put up with everything is pretty difficult. Some people, though, have moved to what is being called redder pastures. California conservatives leaving the state for redder pastures. This is from the LATimes.com. And a lot of them are landing in Texas. But we have this also from LATimes.com. Go back to California. Wave of newcomers fuels backlash in Boise, Idaho. See, now we're not being welcomed out of the states. Like, oops. Yeah, we have a migration issue, and people are moving now and are landing in places they're not being welcomed. So, we don't be surprised if we're going to be seeing something like a migration crisis where other states are not going to want to take California residents anymore, because they're going to suffer from a housing crunch, because there's only so long that Ohio can be a hot market, and we have a housing affordability issue. It can only last for so long unless we have more housing supply. Because this is another one from about housing supply. FoxNews.com reports that baby boomers may put tidal wave of 21 million homes on the market, but who will buy them? Well, this article is kind of silly in its face, because I've been talking about having problems with housing supply. And if baby boomers do provide houses, now we have inventory to be able to buy, and it will lead to a price correction, because there's a lot more to buy and less demand. By virtue of that, prices come down. So that's actually something I'm looking forward to have more houses available. And when there's too many houses, not enough buyers, now we're talking about level playing field. Now we have an alleviation to the housing crisis, and I'm looking forward to that. But the Fox News article kind of entitles it like, oh my gosh, there's so many houses, who's going to buy them? Well, people that need to buy. It's simple. That's why prices are so high. There's nothing to buy. So there you go. Don't put a negative spin on this. I'm telling you, a lot of these articles have a negative spin on them because the economy's stupid. That's Trump's trump card. And if you can, and this is an election cycle, you're going to see a lot of negative news about the economy. And when you have a strong housing market, because the financial sectors are the ones that are hit often because the blue chips keep moving. But when housing is strong, it's the backbone of America, and it will be strong. But if you can discourage it or harm it in some way, you will have a strong negative effect on the economy as a whole, because people live in homes. And that's what I mean, that all this stuff is being politicized, and it's sad. It's been happening for a long time. I'm not surprised by it, but it still upsets me, because then it discourages individuals like you from making the right choices. That's why I encourage you to continue doing your own research. Thank you for listening to my show. But also do your own research with actual sources of economics that are not based on political opinions. Because if you look into that, then you'll be able to see for yourself that the numbers don't lie, folks. I remember when I had, I did a business calculus exam, and I missed one of my questions that dropped me to a B+/A-. So like, oh, I missed that one. All because I had a negative symbol instead of a positive symbol. And I said, well, look, I got the numbers right. It's just that the symbols were off, Can you just give me credit for that? And I didn't get credit for it. And I was a little upset about that. Come on, this is dumb. So when I left, I don't know why this clicked upon me, because I'm a big fan of physics. I love quantum mechanics, even though I don't grasp all of it. That's why it's fascinating to me, because it's still, you have to keep digging into the theorems and stretching things to learn more about it. But as I was digging more, as I was thinking about physics, I'm like, wait a minute. If these calculations were to launch a rocket into space, and I had a negative instead of a positive, or if I was off by a little bit of a point something degree, I would be sending somebody the wrong direction, and it could be life or death. No, my answer is wrong. Even though I missed it by a symbol, I got it wrong. And what I'm getting at is that in math, it's about absolutes. Math doesn't care about your feelings. So let the numbers speak for themselves, folks. Don't let all this fear-mongering get the better of you. And now I want to end it with positive news. This one is the strong housing market for veterans, because it is. This one I'm actually going to read a little bit from. This is from themreport.com. The Urban Institute says that there currently are more than 19.2 million veterans living in the United States. And when it asks where's the best market for them, the Urban Institute found that Tampa, Florida was named the best place for veterans to live because it possesses a healthy economy, job opportunities, and a reliable quality of life. Tampa came in at 8. Well, I don't want to dive into the breakdown of this, but joining Tampa at the top of the list was Austin, Texas, Orlando, Raleigh, North Carolina, and Scottsdale, Arizona. Fremont, California has the highest share of military skill-related jobs, followed by Madison, Wisconsin. Irvine, California, where I just put my veteran buyer in. Lo and behold, I didn't really know that, but this is pretty cool. Durham, North Carolina, and Seattle, Washington. So Santa Ana, California has the lowest veteran unemployment rate, while Cincinnati, Ohio has the highest. So you just got to look where you're going to end up. But if you're in California and you're a veteran, there's a lot of places where you can situate yourself that's made entirely for you, because it's housing veterans appropriately. And I did not know that part about Santa Ana. That's great, because honestly, I didn't even know there were that many veterans living in Santa Ana. So I'm wondering which parts they are. That explains why I saw a lot of Veteran Affair approved condos within Orange County, mostly concentrated around Santa Ana and Costa Mesa, that when I was condo hunting with my veteran buyer. So that explains it there. And I wanted to leave this on that's I want to leave this episode on these positive notes. So there is the good news out there. You just got to cut through the bull, because the negative news is what drives the clicks. So don't let yourself be dissuaded by that. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is it for this episode of the Andres Segovia Show, and that's the way the news goes. So I want you to know two things. One, I have a contest coming up. So in the next episode, I will be announcing how you can get in on the action. I'm going to be doing some giveaways. I'm going to be giving away tech gifts accompanied with my book. And for first place winner, if you are a part of the Enoch Bellagio readers, you will get an IOU, the third book, because that's the best way to ensure that I read the third book. Yeah, I am writing the third book. Okay, I'm a quarter of the way through the novel. Just that I had to put it on hold to write this 550-page book that is the Andres Segovia Show Transcripts of the Early Days. And I wanted to do a giveaway both as a thank you and also because I want to promote my book. Ta-da! So it benefits you. It doesn't hurt, right? So rules and conditions are coming up. So stay tuned for that. Like, share, and subscribe to stay in the know. And also share it with everybody you know that could benefit from the show and could be, hey, they're looking for something for free. They can check it out. I will announce what those things are in the next episode that I'll be giving away. Now, number 2, have a wonderful December, because we're reaching the end of the year. If you want to reflect on the true sentiment of this, it's this: time waits for no one, and time is flying by. My kids are getting bigger, and I enjoy every moment I have with them, even when they upset me. But it's part of being a parent, And I'm not one of those that like try to hold on, like, don't grow up. No, I'm excited about seeing my kids grow up, because if I get to see them graduate, that means I lived long enough to see that. So count your blessings. Whether you live each day as if it's your first or it's your last, the point is, make the most of it. I'm thankful for every single one of you, and I hope you had a fantastic Thanksgiving weekend. So now have an awesome, festive season. Festivus for the rest of us, just in case you don't celebrate Christmas or New Year's. But for those of you that do, I'm already wishing it, because it's the thing. You just do it. It's the season. So Merry Christmas, and I guess eventually Happy New Year. And for the Festivus, for the rest of us, enjoy that one. Okay. All right, folks. It's the season to be jolly. So I just wanted to express that and just pay it forward, because it's a time to be jolly. And whether or not you do celebrate the main holidays of the month, there's still a Festivus for the rest of us. Okay, I'm gonna wrap this one up here. I'm calling it in, and as always, I'll see you on the next one.